So why do I pray even though I don't necessarily believe that there is a God? That's what this video is about. I'm Tim, this is Selfless Awakening, where I like to talk about things like this: mindfulness, spirituality, metaphysics, personal growth. If you like what I'm talking about, subscribe, click the little notification to stay up to date, okay? All right, so here we go. Why would I pray if I don't know if there's a God? If I can't prove to you that there's a God, if I can't prove that there's some higher consciousness, author of the universe, well, why would I pray? Well, for me, it's pretty straightforward, at least how I got started. Why I continue to do it, that's even a bit more interesting. But the reason that I started was because I couldn't stop drinking. I'm 45 now. When I was 30, I was drinking about a quart of hard liquor a day, having a real problem with existence in general. And it wasn't until my wife at the time kicked me out and I had to sleep. I couldn't stay at home a night, and this particular night, and I had to sleep in the minivan with my head on a spare tire and a bottle of Jim Beam between my legs. And that next morning I woke up, I went to AA, and it was in AA that they tell you, you have to surrender your thinking, which clearly isn't working because it's landed you in AA. You need to surrender this thinking over to some higher power. It doesn't need to be God per se. It could be your idea of God. It could be a mountain. It could be a tree. It could be some inanimate object. Like, they don't care what you choose as your higher power as long as you choose it, which for anyone who has any atheist tendencies, that's the most insane thing to do. Why would you do any experiment on something that you can't prove to be true? That's the big thing right there. And that's the leap of faith that anyone has to take when they start AA, of like, you come in, usually your ego is smashed because you've tried all these things and you keep failing because you keep getting drunk and you keep messing up. And then you come in completely beaten, and now the next thing you're supposed to do is surrender yourself and your decision making and your guidance in your life to some idea of a higher power. And it could be anything you pick. I mean, it sounds like a lot of BS to a logical mind. It really does. And the thing is, for me, I had such a resistant mind in the beginning. When I was 30, I had such a resistant mind to everything, including the idea of doing something I didn't really believe in, that there was no way that I was going to do any experiments of praying or asking for intuitive guidance or asking for help with decisions from some entity. I was so resistant to the idea of doing that experiment. But one of the cool things about drinking a quart of hard liquor a day and being scared to death that you're going to die is you go into a meeting where there's a bunch of other people that also had that feeling. And they tell you, hey, if you want to survive, you might try this. It worked for me. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'll try it. So you start reluctantly trying this idea of switching, like saying these prayers: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. You're going into this whole, you start saying things like that. And even though you don't believe it and you feel kind of cheesy and you feel corny, you feel almost like you're deceiving yourself. But I don't believe you are, and I'm going to explain why. But this is what it felt like for me in the beginning. It just felt like I just had to keep saying this stuff to me. And it's like, and then the question really comes up, and what's the point? Is it just that, does this fall into the same category as blind faith, people believing things that are not true and doing it in a sort of naive, woo-woo, not good for humanity sort of way? Or is this an example, like what I was doing at AA, of opening up to the possibility of something greater for a better purpose? That's it, and that's the thing to really look at here. And that's where I think a lot of atheists get stuck, is there, and also scientists too, by the way, when it comes to the exploration of the unknown, like quantum physics, for instance. There aren't a lot of scientists that are interested in pursuing quantum stuff because they feel a lot of it is unknowable. So it's like, let me do experiments and get my grants and get my funds from things that I know are tangible, that people are okay with talking about because it points to something. A lot of times people are uncomfortable with the idea of looking at things that they don't really believe that they can prove, so they just don't look. But my experience with AA, being kind of forced into doing this experiment, in my mind at least, of surrendering myself to some sort of higher power and talking to it all day long, asking it for guidance, listening for guidance, trying to discern the information that I have in my head, if it is from whatever this source is, or if it's from some egoic motivation that may be similar to the same kinds of motivations that landed me in AA meetings to begin with. It's like you start asking for better guidance. And so the real question is this a waste of human experience to do this because it's not provable? And here's my feeling on that. It's absolutely not a waste of time to do that, in my experience. And here's why. It's like, well, let's look at the idea of what we're doing here. And that's going to be where you have to look at your own belief structures and the thoughts that you value and hold to be as true as to what's important about being a human. And I can say for me, I am willing to do an experiment of praying to a God that I don't know exists for the purpose of me enjoying my experience more, being a human being. Even though I'm praying to something that I know I don't know is there or not. For me, this 15-year experiment I've been doing of doing that and asking for guidance has given me a profoundly different life experience in an amazing way, in a real amazing way. And whether or not it's just me, by doing whatever this process is, by asking the universe for guidance and asking for help on things, and when something's bothering me, bringing it up, talking to the universe about it, and then asking the universe if there's anything I can learn from it so that I can release and move on. Whether or not there is something out there that's truly helping me, or if it's just me asking this question is helping my self-awareness process become better at, figuring itself out, I don't really care. I don't. I'm going to keep doing it anyway because it works. And I could hear a skeptical, maybe atheist mind arguing, because I have that same thinking too, of like, well, why don't you just do the practices and just say, pray to yourself instead of praying to God or praying to something outside of yourself? The reason is because, well, first of all, I don't know. But what I do know is that by me doing that, it feels better and helps me not be ruled by shitty thinking that landed me in AA when I do it. I still don't know if there's a God at all, but I will pray to one as if there is, and I ask for guidance as if there is. And if it's just my internal mind finding the highest good and searching for the highest good because it thinks that God would give me the highest good for myself, and then I'm feeling alignment with the highest good in my mind that I have my own self in my own mind come up with, even if that is true, I'm fine with that too. I don't need to understand how it works for me to do the experiment. And that's the most important thing about any of this, is like, why does it matter if you know? If it makes your life better to do it, then you might as well do it, because you don't know if it's true and you don't know if it's not true. So do the experiment on the side of, well, maybe it's true. Maybe there is some energy out there in the universe that really wants to help me feel better. And maybe it's given me this thing called free will so that I don't have to choose to follow it. I can have my own experience as a human being. But if I really get in trouble or I need some help, I can open up to guidance from source energy, higher consciousness, God, some other thing, staying open to the possibility of that being true. That feels like the only intelligent place to be. Saying that you believe and that you know God is not true is just as immature and naive of a way to approach life, in my opinion, as saying that definitively there is a God that is true. Unless you have had some experience of God that you say definitively you believe God to be true. And if you have had that personal experience, that's amazing and that's exciting. And I would love to have that experience too. And so much of this type of thing, these experiments that we do, are really only for ourselves. We have to, and that makes perfect sense to me, because I believe that awakening happens on the individual level, not the collective level. It happens collectively by the individuals having their own experiences, the same experiences that are worthwhile having, even without the part of the brain that is talking in your head that likes to 1 + 1 = 2, that part of the brain that can't make sense of the existence of God. That part of the brain doesn't need to understand to do the experiments and for the experiments to be worthwhile. Doubt it the whole way. If you want to be doubting it and doubting the experiment and the process, do it. But still, try it. Try it for a couple months. Praying every day, asking for guidance, releasing things to the universe, letting go of old pattern thinking. See if it makes you feel better. If it does, keep doing it. If it doesn't, stop. There's nothing wrong with keeping doing it if you don't believe in it. And that's the point. Okay? All right, so there we go. Yeah, this is all kind of spun out of the post I did on Instagram yesterday, which was saying I've never met an atheist who did did scientific method on spiritual concepts, and that spawned a huge conversation on Facebook. So that's where this video came from, and I hope it's of service to someone in particular. Maybe it's of service to someone who is struggling with addiction and wants to go into the 12 steps and is looking to get past those first steps of surrendering to some higher power outside of yourself. Maybe this could be a video to help you do that. So anyway, all right, there we go. Hope that helps. Again, my name is Tim Welch. This is Selfless Awakening. If you like what I'm talking about, subscribe. I like to make a lot of content like this to be of service to people feeling better. So cheers. Have a great day.